do have a quorum, so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order because it is 5:30. So I will go ahead and ask everybody to stand with me for the pledge.
We have all of our regulars here.
All of our regulars. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Perfect. Well, welcome regulars. Nice to have you in the audience, and welcome to anybody watching online. I'll now go ahead and ask everybody to help me recite the mission and the vision of the Nampa School District. Mission. The mission of the Nampa School District is to ensure high levels of achievement for every student. Vision. Every student is fully engaged in extraordinary learning experiences, preparing for successful transition to the next stage of life. Perfect. I will now go ahead and accept a motion to approve our agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We're going to go directly into comments. Mr. Coffey.
Good evening, everyone. I was specifically asked by some of our building reps at our most recent building rep meeting to come to this meeting and to beseech you, to implore you, to move as quickly as you can on all of the issues that will be affecting school closures and the changing of employment for some number of staff people. It's not lost on the staff people that this is affecting, the kids and the families and where they're going to go and all that, but it somehow seems different that this is their livelihoods, which is just a different, not necessarily better or more important, but it's a different issue of for where you work. I think it's fair to assume that all the people that are working in those schools that are going to be closed or repurposed want to be there. They would have, all either been hired specifically for that place or have had many opportunities over their years to work somewhere else. And so they're there because they want to. And so losing that location because of external factors, is not something that they particularly want. The most recent sort of experience that elementary folks in particular have is the whole process of the curriculum selection, which seemed like it took much longer than people had intended. Maybe the process had been designed. I'm not sure about that, but it seemed like it was. All for what seemed, the ironic thing then is the choice at the end of the process was like the most mainstream, obvious corporate choice available. In terms, because we've got the HMH, right? So. The one thing I got the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Russell and Ms. Hamlin to go through an early draft of what the involuntary transfer process will look like. And there's all sorts of details, that need to be ironed out. Overall, I think it was, it was a good start. But the one thing that was concerning to me was that if any part of the process is held up, takes longer than was planned, you can have a huge mess on your hands. And the one part of the process that seemed particularly concerning, maybe is too strong a word, but I'll say concerning to me, was the process that to me most mirrors the curriculum selection process, which is that you're going to have people, stakeholders, parents, I assume, do the redrawing of boundaries. And even though there's a computer program that should help them do that, that process, is going to involve all sorts of people that will have their own issues, interests, predilections involved. I was trying to think of an analogy on my drive over here about what that's like. And so, because it's Thanksgiving, the best I could come up with was, to me, it's sort of like you're making this whole big Thanksgiving dinner, and a part of it is the pumpkin pie. And so you're going to have some of your guests make the pumpkin pie. but you don't want to trust them with the crust because that's important, that's the whole structure. So you're gonna give them the crust. You can't just really trust them to make all the ingredients themselves because there's federal regulations and statutes and things like that. So you prefab, you kind of mix up the ingredients for them. So you give them the crust, the ingredients pre-made, and you tell them, okay, assemble it and cook it. And so what they're left to do then is argue about how long it's going to cook for. What's the temperature of the oven? If Aunt Joni opens up the oven every 2 minutes to check on it because she likes it one way and Uncle Johnny likes it another way, well then the problem is the whole thing is delayed because you have to cook the turkey still. And if you've ever waited around for the turkey to finish cooking because you had to cook a bunch of other stuff first, then people get hungry, and the problem is they might leave. And I just am worried that part of the process is particularly susceptible to kind of the worst, aspects of group decision making. That what will be invited from them is to have all of their biases, all of their sentimental, longings and memories and all of that inflicted into this process. That really is actually fairly straightforward. There aren't that many ways to cook a pumpkin pie, at least to make it, to make it good and edible. There aren't that many ways to redraw the boundaries. But there's a certain concern, certainly a concern that this process is going to get out of hand and delay everything. And people are worried. So that's my message to you today.
Are you finished, Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Trustees, are there any questions for Mr. Coffey?
Yeah, Madam Chair. So is the should we not then get public input? Is that what I hear you saying? Is that what some of the people that you represent would rather not have the patrons and the public input on this process? Because I hear what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but
I mean, nobody told me that in particular. Just putting these pieces together. So I'm not here to tell you that the teachers are all saying, don't let the parents say anything. That's not at all the message. There is definitely an understanding that to some extent, parents, should have a voice in the matter. The concern, though, is what is the real impact? The last time we talked about like the fake rigor in the ISAT test, or I guess T stands for test, and the ISAT. What is the point of that? It's wildly unnecessary and overcomplicating things, and it actually gives you a false picture. So to me, the parent participation in this process, is it real participation? Do they really have the ability to actually, impact the decision, to impose their will and desires? I mean, the first step that you all have is to figure out which buildings to close and repurpose. And that, to me, that's the crust. You're making that ahead of time, which is good because the structure, will be there. Well, what's left then? And so I guess what I'm asking you is to just be mindful of the fact that while participation maybe is inherent in the process, that it, to be more watchful and considerate, that because I didn't pay that much attention to the elementary curriculum issue, but it seemed like maybe had been opportunities where the board could have made a decision earlier than it did. That by letting that committee process go on and on and on, then now you're stuck making a decision, at the end. Whereas at any point, by rights, my take is you could have just made a decision. And again, because the ultimate decision was like the most obvious corporate decision there, what was the point of all those months of haranguing? So I think that's what I may be asking you to do is to not let that happen again, to be more mindful of the timeframes and when the oven dings that first time, it's like you gotta move on.
okay.
Perfect. Trustees, any other questions for Mr. Coffey? All right, thank you, Mr. Coffey.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Likewise.
All right, now we've got trustee comments or updates. Trustee Kirkman?
Well, I didn't have anything until Mr. Coffey came up, but I just want to make sure. I totally understand and get where he's coming from and those that he represents, and I agree. I absolutely agree. The process can be certainly bogged down and become very cumbersome when you have every single person, and we want every single person to comment. But there's some people that will comment just to complain or say, I don't like this, and then there's some people that bring substantive, comments or suggestions or things like that to the table, and I think that's what we definitely will, make sure that we're listening to and taking into account. But you're absolutely right. This process needs to move at a pretty good clip, and I think the staff have a plan in place to do that, and we'll be right there lockstep with them to make sure that it happens and those decisions are made when they need to be made.
Okay. Trustee Simpson?
I just want to reiterate what Trustee Kirkman mentioned, feel the same way. I mean, I've been talking about looking at this process for I think at least 6 years now, that it needs to be looked at and done, and it is a hard decision and it is tough, and I get it, but we also have to be fiscally responsible, and we have to do what's best for all kids in Nampa to make sure that we're doing the very best to educate them. And I would wholeheartedly agree that we need to make sure, which means when there are opportunities to participate and have your voice heard, I just want to remind people to please participate and take part during those times, because that's what helps the process to keep moving along on the time frame that the administration does have set up, and partly that we've asked them to set up so that we can hear that feedback from the community members. So yeah, that being said, I'm just hoping those that are in the room and those that are listening know hey, these things are coming up, and we do want to hear from you, and we want to hear from you then, so that it's timely, not emails 2-3 days later, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm going to just ditto what you both said. I think that all of us understand the weight of the decisions that are upon us. And then I am going to segue to say that I also got the opportunity, was it last week, Dr. Russell? Week before? That we got to visit schools?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
Got an opportunity to not only watch some of the HMH instruction for teachers, which was really cool, but to visit schools, and saw a lot of great things. But I think the main thing that I saw was so much student interaction, very little use of devices for all of our parents who worry that kids are on devices all day long. That was not the case. They were interacting. They were just really weirded out by Dr. Russell asking them what they were doing at random, but it was adorable. They would look at him. Some of them were okay, and some of them were like, So no, it was great. Sorry, it was just great to watch. And it was really cool just to be in that atmosphere, to see how our choices do impact the schools. Everything that I saw was super functional. Everything that I saw was super orderly. Staff was really excited to have us there. Kids were actually really excited to have us there. It was interesting. And of course, we got to go to elementary schools, and those kids are the cutest. So anyway, I just want to give that update on the state of our schools, on what I was able to see with some of those tours. So that was really a nice thing to do. So. Okay. So that is going to go ahead and commence those trustee comments and updates. So we will go ahead now and pull our sheets to see if we have any public comment.
There is none.
Perfect. Okay. No public comment. I'll now go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, we will now move into our action items. We will start with A. Dr. Russell?
Chair Taylor, trustees, before you tonight is policy 3010, our open enrollment policy. This is a policy that we have brought in draft form a couple of board meetings now. I'm not going to rehash the whole history of the policy, but the last time we were here, there were some questions around some asterisks in that policy and kind of why were certain asterisks placed in the policy. And what did those mean? And I didn't have the answer, although I was given the answer like the very next day, and then it made sense. So the asterisks in the original version of the policy were just to donate or to signify that special ed students may not follow those same open enrollment processes, because special ed students have special rights underneath federal law and IDEA. For example, a student who is chronically absent, we may not revoke that open enrollment immediately, because that student, we would have to do a manifestation determination to see if maybe the disability is causing some of that. So there's just more steps and processes. And so that's all the asterisks were really pointing to, was just to remind it, although it was nowhere located in the policy that's what that meant. So it was a very good question. We did go back to our legal and talk to them again, and legal said we didn't really need to have those asterisks there because IDEA law is something that we would have to follow in a variety of policies. Our policies don't trump federal law when it comes to due process rights and the rights of special education students. So we decided to take those out. So there is no asterisks in there, but I did want the trustees to know that special education students may not follow the exact same revocation process or anything along those lines, because they have some special rights underneath the federal law.
Dr. Russell,
Go ahead, Chair.
I know we appreciate you looking into those questions for us.
I was just gonna say, well, line 93 and 94 is what is referring to the special education anyway, so that's where those asterisks were referring to lines 93 and 94. So if that's still in there, I'm good with it.
Yep.
Okay, I am as well. Trustees, do we have a motion here?
Or 96, 97, it looks like.
Yeah,
Yes,
well,
a couple of
And
times.
it's referenced
And then
in
it's
85,
referenced down
86, and
below,
87
yeah.
too. Yeah, but I get what it references
Yeah.
now.
I move that we approve this for first and final read. Am I
We're in second.
second
Be
and
second
final
and final.
read? Sorry.
Okay, I second. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will now move to B, the second reading of policy 2180, the parental rights policy. Dr. Russell?
Yeah, trustees, in a similar fashion, this is a policy that we have brought in front of the board for a couple of times. And again, not going to rehash the whole history of the policy. But when we were here last month, there was a couple of questions around determining some words around what is reasonable when it becomes an unreasonable accommodation. How do we determine that? What are the factors that determine reasonableness in that? And so wanted to just highlight a couple of clarities that we made. And it's in line, I believe, 36 through 39. Let's see here. So I'll just read lines 36 through 39. Again, it says, to be considered reasonable, and this is if a parent asks for a reasonable accommodation from the curriculum. To be considered reasonable, the accommodation or activity shall be without substantial impact to the staff or school resources, workload, meet the class standards, ensure the safe and efficient operations of the class or school, and balance the educational needs of other students. So that essentially would be the lens in which you would gauge the activity that would be reasonable and requested. And just wanted to clarify that language a little more. That was up higher in lines 12 through 21, but just brought it down there again so that it was kind of in those bullet points for that. The second major change to this was, I believe as Trustee Vai had some questions around surveys and what if a student did not want to participate in a non-academic extracurricular survey. And so if you look on lines 95 and 96, we did add a statement there that says, furthermore, if a student chooses to not participate in any non-curricular survey, they may do so without penalty. And so they have the ability to, if they so choose, not participate in a non-curricular survey, they may do so. And I believe that was the two major things that came out of our last discussion on that. So happy to answer any questions or have further discussions.
Chair
Trustees?
Taylor, yeah, so that question, 96, that statement, is that a student can just opt out without any parental involvement?
Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, that would be accurate. The student could choose to not participate and wouldn't need to contact the parents or anything. They just may say, I don't want to participate in the survey or feel like they have that right to. Now, if it is curricular, that would be a different story because then it would tie to
Right,
the
we're talking
class.
about personal
Questionnaires.
issues, yeah.
Personal info.
Yeah, personal info.
Trustees, any other questions for Dr. Russell? No?
Yeah,
Dr. Russell?
well, I'm
Oh.
sorry, I'm just, without parental environment, I don't know, and I may get in the weeds too far on this, but, you know, there might be some students who feel compelled that they have to fill out that survey because it was given to them by the teacher, and I'm talking about maybe elementary, middle school kids, but, and then they fill that out because they may feel like they need to, and then the parent afterwards, you know, is like, why did you, I don't want that information shared. So the student fills out the survey without the parent knowing that that survey is done. Well, I don't know how that can be rectified or if
Yeah.
necessary.
Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, it's a good question. I understand kind of the scenario in which that would be. What we were trying to do again is any non-curricular survey that, and going back to the policy that talked around, you know, sex, religion, political beliefs, et cetera, those would have to have parent written permission. The district then would vet various ones because the situation that came up this fall again was, you know, what's your favorite summer vacation spot? How many siblings do you have? And some of those questions. And we were trying to create a way that teachers could ask those questions without having to get parental permission on every single one of those. So trying to find that balance.
Yeah.
Again, when we talked with staff, that's what they wanted. And again, talking with our parent group, you know, that's what they felt like. Yeah, teachers should be able to ask those. So I don't know how to, yeah, I'm not sure how to get that situation where a student may feel, and I do believe that if my teacher gives it to me, if I'm a fifth grader, I may feel like I have to fill it out. But I think what we're trying to do at the district is vet those questions first so that we're not, that it really isn't anything that should be
Trustee Kirkman,
concerning,
does
I
it not
guess.
feel like the previous language where it says, if the content of any such survey, questionnaire, or screening regards an individual student's sexuality, sex, religion, personal, political beliefs, mental, or physiological?
No.
Yeah.
Not necessary.
Well, where it says, or individual or family, financial, school personnel shall provide the survey, questionnaire, or screening form to the students, parents, guardians in advance and obtain written permission from the parents, guardians for the student's participation. And then it goes in to say, and furthermore, if the student chooses not to participate in any non-curricular survey, they may do so without penalty. Do you feel like that encompasses what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
I
Read as
do.
a
I
whole?
just was thinking about the student who might get the survey handed out to them or sit down on the first day of school. But then I'm also thinking, you know, at the beginning of the school year, parents should understand or at least know that these surveys will be used
To get to know
by
your
the
child.
staff to get to know your child. And if you don't want, or would you like some more information, then get hold of the teacher and
Yeah.
find out what they're
Yeah.
doing. I mean, that's really where there's got to be some involvement and action, if you will, on the parents to get involved too. I just didn't want a student to feel like they had to answer this and no matter what. But
right.
I'm comfortable with the language in there. I really am. I just
Okay.
want to make sure that there was, you know, and there's no way that you can pinpoint every single little thing and try to fix it. We'd have policies coming out the yin yang.
I feel like it's rather balanced the way that it's written. So I like the addition of that because that way a student isn't penalized. So I feel like we've gotten as close as we can.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
again, I don't have a problem with this. Just a question I wanted to.
No, I'm glad you did. I just wanted to kind of talk it out.
So on that, no, oh, sorry, go ahead, Chair. I don't- I'm
Totally
jumping right in
done.
front of
No,
you.
please.
Let's move this
I
along.
can see you're doing it. You're speaking my language tonight, my friend.
Yeah, so I move that we accept this second and final reading of this policy.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Do we need to name that policy or, okay, perfect. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm like, don't say that because I don't think I said the policy number.
I don't even know if I heard it the last time.
Clerk's taking good notes.
Yeah.
C, Dr. Russell, on to C, policy 1100 membership.
Yeah, Chair Taylor, trustees, this is a recommended policy that came out through some of the ISBA updates this year, and this has to do with, I'm gonna look at our clerk Lamont. Is it a code or a rule change?
It's both. It's an Idaho code now for when realigning boundaries.
Yep. So,
Okay, go ahead.
no, you're fine. I knew there was a code or rule change that occurred to this. Essentially, what this policy states that if a trustee is sitting in a zone and a zone gets redrawn on them, and they haven't moved, then they can finish serving out their term. If, however, a trustee moves from out of their zone, from zone 1 to zone 4, or zone 3 to zone 5, during their term, then you would have to declare a vacancy, essentially. And I don't know if there's anything further, Clerk Lamont, but I think those were the two major.
Correct. And so
issues.
it's clear in there so that people don't have to look in code to find it. And I think it was a recommended change. I also think with the discussion of school boundaries, it's good to get that put on because it is aligned with law, and then it's a clear understanding of if the board member does want to fulfill the term. It doesn't say they have to. It just
true.
does give them
Yep.
that availability to.
Does the statute give them that
Yes.
option? Well, then what's the necessity of having a policy that restates a statute?
I think because this is clear, it said that, it does say in law, but this is clear of how it actually works in the whole, and it also talks about the vacancy. I think it's a recommended policy and a recommended change due to patrons not understanding where to look for code. And then this way you can just align it with your board packets and when you start doing that districting and zoning. And then it also clears up one person's interpretation versus another. It's clear in the policy versus an interpretation of trustee Kirkman versus trustee Simpson.
And Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, I think there was a situation in a school district actually where there was a change of boundaries and then there was some disagreement on the board or whether that person could seat or not. And I think that's how it got to here. And I believe Clerk Lamont is accurate. It's really to help clarify that interpretation. How do you interpret law? How do I interpret law? And then, of course, you have to go to legal to get that. But there was a situation that brought this forth, which is why they recommended it.
Trustees, any additional questions? All right, I will go ahead and entertain a motion.
I move we approve policy 1100 membership for first and final read.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and that brings us to the information items and reports. Dr. Russell, we will start with elementary school class sizes.
Chair Taylor, trustees, tonight I'm going to have Mr. Knopp will come up and share some information with you. As you know, when we had our work session, we shared several mitigation strategies, and as you heard this evening with our association sharing their thoughts around that, one of them was looking at closing some schools and repurposing some schools. And one of the questions that came out from that was, what are our class sizes now, and what would happen if we closed schools? What would our class sizes look like then? And so we put together some numbers just to kind of show, I think you're going to see two things here. One is what we mean by the inefficiencies that we're seeing now, running at 14 buildings, considering our enrollment drop and the class sizes and the school capacities at what they are. We'll clarify that. And then you'll see, going back to that discussion about boundaries, if boundaries are drawn well, and I mean well by at least having balance, then you'll see how our class sizes move back up to where we would like them to be, at least having less discrepancies of high classes and very small classes. So that summarizes what Mr. Knopp's going to show, but Mr. Knopp's got some graphs and things to share with us as well.
Dr. Russell, you took all my thunder, yeah.
And then you
Might as well go home.
Questions?
Last slide.
Good evening, trustees, and yes, that was an excellent introduction there, and Tyler's going to run the slides for us, and hopefully I don't get barking at Tyler too much about moving faster through the slides, so we'll start with, real quick, those first couple slides are reviews, so slide number 2 shows, as we talked about during the work session, so roughly 1,900 students, a little over the last decade. that we've seen in a decrease in enrollment, and then just a lot of the variables we believe that are playing into that decrease. But just reminding everybody, it's a large decrease, right? Like that's a huge hit. Go ahead, Tyler, into the next slide there. So another representation, this is all that what we refer to as cohorts. So as a group of students enters our district as kindergartners, and then kind of tracking them through. For the purpose of the elementary lens tonight, what I'd like to kind of show is up towards the top third of that chart for elementary, K through 5. You'll notice our cohorts were 1,200 to the high 1100s. And then as you move down to the middle of that chart, we're kind of down into the 1100s and the thousands. And then the bottom of that third of that chart, we're now down into the thousands and 900s. With this year, we saw our first 800. If the trend stays the same, that says in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll be in the 900s and 800s. That's kind of how those 11 years have kind of flowed. And like we talked about in the work session, we've yet to find any variables that really show that trend is not going to happen. We have not seen a trend that stabilizes our enrollment quite yet. And so just kind of that gives you a visual of how at the elementary level those have been rolling through. Hence, we see considerably smaller cohorts in the next couple years than we saw up at the beginning around 13, 14, 15, so forth and so on. So this has been happening to us for a while now. Is another good way to say that, I think. Tyler, go ahead, next slide. So as Dr. Russell said, some of the questions we had were and concerns around class sizes. What happens if we condense schools? We have less schools, and what's that going to do class sizes? And very valid, and we wanted to be able to answer those questions with more than just, well, we think, right? So we did some projections. Randy Dewey and I and Assistant Superintendent Waylon Yarborough, and we sat down and kind of went through the process we go through every spring. So we used the same projection analysis. I won't get into the details, but we just plugged in our enrollment numbers for this year and ran those out. We're normally fairly accurate on that. We try to be within 100. Usually we're well within that. This year you'll see 23-24. We projected 61-76 this year. November 20th, we were at 59.93. But most of that being off can be attributed directly to kindergarten cohort. So none of our projections had kindergarten being below 850, which it is right now. That was off by 100. And so one cohort, and it happens to be the cohort that's entering our system, is what threw those numbers off. Still reasonable though, within what we were in there. That's still a reasonable projection. That's not like catastrophically way off. So, using that same projection analysis, we have next school year 24-25, projected at 59.16. So still seeing a decrease in enrollment. The other thing I want to point out before we get into these numbers, our general elementary FTE, that's for classrooms, music, and physical education, was 290.5. So that's what we projected out to fund last year when we went through this process. For school year 24-25, we're using the projection of 270 FTE for K-5 general education, PE, and music. So that's a decrease of 20.5. We think that's reasonable. We also understand that it may be less than that. So we hope to be at 270, but 265 is a real possibility. Hopefully not less than that, but I guess it's possible. We won't know till we get closer to state revenues to know exactly what we can afford. But 270 is the number we used for these projections. Tyler? Understand the class target sizes we are shooting for at the elementary level, 22 in kinder and first grade, 26 in second and third grade, and then 28 in fourth and fifth grade. So those are the targets we're looking for, and those are the targets we throw into the projection analysis that we do. So that's our divisor, so to speak, and that's where we want to hit. Obviously, we'd love to stay below there, but with we're realistic, understanding that really what we look for is something that's maybe 2 below that and 2 above that. Certainly anything more than 2 above that, we try to address that to the best of our ability, but we want to stay within that variance. Tyler? So when we project that out with 14 schools, I know that's kind of a noisy slide there. 14 schools. Yellow signifies the number of schools and grade level cohorts that we miss our target by more than 2 below, and then red is by more than 2 above. So you can see that our projections for next year, about half of those we're missing it one direction or the other. That's quite a few misses.
Chair Taylor, quick question. On the previous slide, those numbers, are those the projected for if schools close, or are those where we're at now?
We're hoping that projection stays the same. So revenue would be the only thing that changes those projections. So let's say something crazy comes in and we let's say we have to have 255 on FTE, then we would adjust those projections up.
Okay, but this is where we want to stay.
We'd
We'd
like to stay
Yeah.
here. Let's say for some reason our projections are even higher, revenue comes in even higher, and maybe we could be at 280. We might even drop those by 1 or 2. Those are the same projections we used for this school year. Randy Dewey would have to verify because I didn't pull up previous year's FTE sheets. Pretty sure these are projections that have been there for a while now. If we did adjust, it would have been by maybe 1 or 2 at the K1 level a few years back. Those may have raised just a little bit.
Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, just to clarify, yes, this is what we try to shoot for. These are the class sizes that we try to shoot for. That balances class size with the amount of teachers that we can afford and put into our elementary classrooms. And this, as Mr. Knopp has said, has been fairly consistent. I'm looking at Mr. Dewey, can't think the last time we raised those ratios to kind of predict our classes. It's been a while, so pretty consistent.
I can say during the financial crisis, so school year 13-14, we were up above this, but that was for obvious reasons. And then after that, we came down, and we've been real close to this. I'm lucky enough to have sat in all those FTE meetings, and we've been real close to these numbers. These numbers aren't out of bounds any direction, one or the other, over the last 10 years.
And just remind me, where are we at now as far as with these numbers comparatively where we are now? About the same?
That was the next slide.
That's the next slide. So if
This
we
is
go
a
back,
target.
Jumping ahead of you.
We went back. That was the target. This is our
Well,
current.
this is projected next year at 14. You talking about this school year's?
Yeah,
This
like,
school year.
I mean,
We're,
just for.
I don't have those numbers, but I can tell you we're below those targets
Okay.
a lot across the board. We have a couple that maybe are above that. Well, I know we have a few that are a little bit above that.
Like
But
when you say, 20
we,
versus 28.
we came in low. Remember that projection from that one. So we've got a lot of classes and schools that are below that target. Yes.
Yeah, because what I'm
Yes.
thinking, and the questions stem around how big of a shock is that going to be for some teachers if all of a sudden they're teaching a class of 28 as opposed to the previous year they were at 15 or 18 or even 20. I mean, that's kind of where I'm getting at.
Right. And
Okay.
And we have some that are off by a lot, and we're going to get that here in a minute. But most aren't, though. Most are like we're below, but they're reasonably close,
Okay.
right?
Got it.
Yeah,
Perfect. Thank
yeah.
you.
Like we don't have a lot of say, 15 student fifth grades
Yeah.
around. Most of them are within reason.
I'm gonna let you keep going. You might answer
Okay.
my questions.
Okay. Tyler, go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Let's give a little more description to these numbers. So total, that's 42 instances of being above or below. The challenging piece is that third bullet talks about range, and that range is as much as 10 below and 12 above. When we see something like 12 above, we scramble to try to find how we're going to fix that. ESSER spoiled us a little bit. We got to use ESSER to fix those numbers without impacting others. Our reality is, going into next year, we fixed 12 by taking something away from someone else. Now, every once in a while, a teacher moving buildings or moving a grade level would fix both of that, but that's pretty rare. It's very rare that we can fix a 12 over by addressing the 10 under at the same time. So it gets very challenging and complicated. Basically, all that to say that most of the time, in order to fix the 12, we're probably creating something that was below but is now going to be over, and over well above the 2. So it gets hard. That's where that trying to balance and round and move resources around that are limited to try to address our classrooms to have as many of them as possible at that target or within that target is what we try to get done. But in our situation going into next year, we're zero-sum game, right? So we're taking that resource from someone.
And when you say spoiled by ESSER, it was because we were able to hire some more additional staff for
Right.
the classes that maybe had 12 over. or
So,
something.
not to get too far into the weeds, but when we project this out and kind of see where, say, our 8, 10, 11, 12 over variances were, we hadn't distributed those ESSER or some of those staff yet. So in other words, we hadn't put some of those staff into the equation yet. They were kind of on deck. And then we were able to plug them into those buildings to address that size. Didn't impact any other buildings. Next year, we'll be back to the old days, which we're taking a staff member from one school and putting it in another in order to address that. Or we're taking a staff member out of, say, a first grade, putting it into a fourth grade in a particular building. And so you're using a resource to fix an inadequacy by taking it away and probably creating an inadequacy.
And again, the purpose of this question is that there's been some comments like, why is the school district moving so fast in making these decisions? Well, the reason is that one, we don't have ESSER money next year, and so we do need to make some decisions now. And there's a whole bunch of other reasons why too. So I want to make sure that as we have these public discussions, that these are the reasons, and therefore the question is, why
bet.
are we looking at this, and why do we have to look at these things quickly now? We can't wait down the road for this to happen down the road. So I appreciate the responses.
Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, if I could add to that too a little bit. So one of the things we had to do is we had to wait for enrollment to come in this year as well.
Yeah.
Because if enrollment would have been up, then we might have different projections. There might have been different thoughts. We knew ESSER was going to go away. We knew the ADA enrollment switch is going to happen but if enrollment was increasing, that adds us more revenue than we projected. What we saw though was actually a bigger decrease than we had even anticipated by looking at these numbers. So that comes in around the second week of September, we start running these numbers, and then we went into our levy and how important our levy was for us. And then I think by the 1st of October, we were ready to talk through this. And a lot of folks probably don't understand, but budgeting and predicting for other classes starts in January and February. So it's not a big time frame you have for us to start preparing for next school year and how many staff we'll need, and then what we'll be hiring or what we won't be hiring, and how many will be doing that. So I can understand definitely where the public would say, well, this seems very quick. Where is this coming from? But when you look at the whole school year, we had started as soon as we could, and there are some factors that are why we're here.
Thank you. I think that's important to keep reiterating the why it might feel like we're moving quickly, and we are. I mean,
We are.
will be
Yeah.
moving quickly, but there are reasons for that we have no control over. So. All right, thank you very much. Sorry
You
for
bet.
the interruption
You bet.
again.
No, that's why we're here. Tyler, go ahead and go to the next one. So we projected the same thing with 11 schools. Keep in mind that the population of those 11 schools, we just kind of took the number of students that were going to be schoolless, so to speak, and just kind of spread them out. It wasn't scientific. Obviously, boundary committees will figure all that out. Like just in order to do the math, we kind of tried to balance out population into the 11 schools fairly, with some logic behind it. But didn't really overcrowd anybody, but didn't greatly undercrowd anybody. And so you'll see at 11 schools, what our projections came out with, still quite a few below. But we minimized the over drastically. So we've got the over down to 3. Go ahead, Tyler. Go to the next slide, and we'll talk about those numbers just a little bit. So same thing, like that over, we took down to 3 instances. And just keep in mind, just so everybody's aware, I don't think you ever are going to have a situation where you don't miss it some, right? There's always going to be some yellow and red on the board. Perfection in that process is not expected. The range here is what's significant. So bullet number 3, we've took that range down to 5 below to 3 over. So that's really where we've made a huge difference, just in our ability to equitably spread out our resources when we're not spread as thin on the 14 schools. So 11 gives us a fighting chance to have much more balanced classrooms across the district.
All right, going from 19 to 3 being over.
It's a lot,
Yeah.
yep. And once again, I also want to let these are early projections. This is with very early estimated revenues, so our 270 FTE, obviously, if we're below 270 FTE, we can expect a little more red on both those scenarios. Less FTE than 270 doesn't make either of those scenarios look better. It makes them both look more challenging than they already look. So I want to just make sure basically I'm saying don't come back at me in March if there's a few numbers that are slightly off there. These are the best of our ability that we can project right now this time of year.
And then, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I just am curious, but I'm also assuming that with your variance with 11 was intentional to try to get from the 290.5 FTE to the 270 or less.
I'm not sure I understand
Like
your
going
question.
from 14 schools to 11 schools, like in showing us the projected
Right.
amount from there. Is that in thinking going from 14 to 11 would be that possible 290.5 FTE down to 270?
Why did we get
Or
it?
am I
So,
overthinking?
no.
No.
I think we did exactly that a little bit. So we knew we were gonna have to get in the range of 270, right? We knew that,
Yes.
that 20,
Yeah.
20 or more FTE cuts to elementary was gonna have to happen. When we plugged these numbers in, here's where we get a little bit in the weeds, right? So we plug those numbers in and then we go in and call round. So we round the number of teachers, because our formula ends up with 2.38 teachers or
Right.
2 point whatever teachers, but we go in and kind of fix and round and patch things up in order to get class sizes as close as possible, and we landed real close to 270 on
Okay.
that. So we kind of attacked it both ways, right?
Gotcha.
We knew that 270 was a fairly realistic number. We also knew that at 11 schools, what would that look like in regards to class size and how off the mark would we be?
Okay,
They both kind of came in pretty
Okay.
decent, right?
thank you.
Chair Taylor, and trustees, and Mr. Knopp, I, again, don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I do want to kind of address a question. And this is a question I think that's very valid that's coming up, that we've heard from our staff and in the community is, well, didn't the levy help us with this, right? And so if I could put an example here, we're predicting at 270 right now. If the levy would have failed and we wouldn't have had the levy, then we would have been at 250, possibly. Maybe 245, and imagine what that would have done to our class sizes there. So the levy definitely did help, but it's not going to help enough that it's going to overcome the loss of enrollment that we're having. So just wanted to kind of give a concrete example of what that may have looked like,
Right.
roughly there.
And just to wrap that up before we get into capacity of the actual buildings, once again, I just want to reiterate with everybody that part of what makes this challenging at the elementary level is we don't have sections. So at the secondary level, teachers can teach sections. You can really have a third of a teacher because of just how it bounces out in the master schedule. You can't have a third of an elementary teacher. So by and large, with elementary teachers, you either go up or you go down by a whole number. So once again, we go down, which means we round down and we stick you with a very large class, or we give you that staff member, now we're up, and then we have a very small class. Because you just can't, and that's where the challenge gets. When we spread ourselves as thin as we are with 14 schools, it just gets really hard to round those down. At some point, round up. At some point, someone's got to get rounded down. That's just the way it is. We don't have the positions to give.
Yeah.
And so people get stuck with large classes. And so it's challenging. And it's not done because we don't enjoy giving people small classes. Like we love small classes, right? Like we get it. It's just not our reality. Tyler, I think we're on capacity slide, correct?
That was me calling you.
I think we're on slide 10, yep. So with those projections, this would be percent of capacity. So the school's overall enrollment capacity, and then how many are actually in there. So you will see at 14 schools with those projected numbers next year, the district will be running at 67%. Remember, anything below 70% is considered unhealthy. So as a district, elementary cohort, we're below the 70%. And then you'll notice all the schools highlighted in yellow aren't hitting that mark either.
So, Chair Taylor and trustees, if I could just point out with this slide, and Mr. Knopp, I think, has shared this, and it's probably a wise assessment to look at it, is right now we have 14 elementary schools, but the number of students within those 14 elementary schools are generating enough revenue for 11. And you can see how we're spread out. We're just so small in so many areas.
Isn't that the FTE question?
Mhm,
Okay, I
mhm.
was just
It's
making
going back
sure.
to that
Okay,
again, though.
Yeah, okay. I was
As
just
we're
making
looking at
sure.
it, but yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
So, Mr. Knopp, in looking at the 14 schools, would you say this is kind of probably an accurate depiction of where we are at now? Do we have any schools in elementary at 40? Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 Greenhurst.
Greenhurst. Thank you.
Well, hold
Well,
on, that's not
Park
what
Ridge
it
is below.
says on the report, in the superintendent's report. I'm looking at these enrollment.
So
Green- Greenhurst is at 85%.
two things.
I'm talking about class sizes on just the 14
It-
projection.
Let's clarify that, because that's a
Yeah.
great question. So Chair Taylor and Trustee Kirkman, there is a difference between the enrollment report, what Greenhurst is at, and here, and Mr. Knopp will explain that.
Okay, thanks.
Right, with these numbers, this is K-5 enrollment. So Greenhurst also has the pre-K program on its campus, so that's reflected there. Park Ridge has a 6, 7, 8 program, so that's reflected there as well. Reflected on the enrollment report you're looking at, Jeff, not here.
No, well, pre-K's not on here. And I apologize for jumping
Let me see
ahead,
what you're looking at.
but there's no pre-K on Greenhurst on this enrollment comparison report. And again, this is in the superintendent's
Thank you.
section.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I was so lost for a
And-
second. Let me go back.
Well, it's,
And it's,
Neckley, it's Nampa Early Child, it's a whole separate line.
Yeah.
So it's not pre-K.
It is, in Greenhurst, is by itself, Neckley, Nampa Early Childhood is its own separate line on that report.
Oh, I see, 244 then,
Yes.
okay. It's
Right.
the same building, but it's in the same
Same
building,
building.
that's
right, so referencing capacity, you're combining programs, so these numbers are K-5 only.
Okay, got it,
Okay,
thank you.
Right. Go ahead, Tyler.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Please do.
Can you remind us of I know, like, we don't want them at 100% either, so there's a low threshold and a high threshold. Reminder, I know I have it written down, but
85, I believe, is what's considered healthy, and Mr. Stoffer's giving me the thumbs up.
yeah, okay.
That,
And where do we get that number? Where do we come up with 85% healthy? Is that generally understood?
I can have Courtney speak more to the specifics.
Okay.
I know through all the facility committee work and our consultants that we worked with, that the range was about 70 to 85, kind of that ballpark.
Kind of
If
a
you can,
industry standard type
if you can land there, you're in good shape. You're not, you give yourself room for growth. You're not wearing your building out because you're overcrowded, yet you're also being efficient because you're using the facility as it was intended to be used. Is Knopp's version. Mr. Stoffer can
I understand.
clean that up when he has the
Knott's version,
microphone.
Thank you.
No, that's good clarification. So same thing, go ahead, Tyler. With 11 schools, once again, we kind of unscientifically just moved them around. These were the same numbers that we used for the projected class size. You'll see as a district, that would put us at 80%. We could have moved some more students around to certainly stay within 70 to 85. Once again, that will be the job of the boundary committees if we go that route. The most important number there is obviously we don't have really small schools, yet the district itself would be operating in a very, what we consider healthy range. Not only healthy range, just in regards to being efficient and not wearing your buildings out, also a good amount of growth, right? The previous chart we showed you, that was roughly 20% drop in growth over those 11 years. That's rough, but right around there for the elementary. So you can see, like, we would have to not only stop our trend, like, we would have to have a massive burst of enrollment in order for capacity to become an issue, because we're now overcrowded. Like, that's just, there's a lot of things that would have to do a 180 in order for us to be standing up here and have a conversation about we need more room. And as Dr. Russell says, we welcome that conversation and solution finding task. Go ahead, did you have a question?
Yeah, so Chair Taylor, this slide, just for clarification, is not specific to any school. That's why
That is not.
those who might be watching this
Right.
wondering, is that my
We,
school? What
we,
number
we,
is my
we
school?
intentionally put school numbers there. We didn't have school names. I did just notice, I don't know why we skipped
figured
to
out the
school
11 and
12, but that
12.
should be school 11. That's just a clear. Right, so that's just straight up 11. We just put numbers there. The only thing we would have paid attention there is knowing the capacity limit of some schools. We didn't.
So
We
knowing
didn't
that-
give 675 schools to a building that can only hold 575.
In that
right? So-
capacity for a building, you're also looking at the, help me out here, the term, how old the building is and the
Yes.
structure of the
Correct.
building and all that.
Correct.
That all comes
Correct.
into play too,
Correct.
as far as capacity goes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Newer the building, probably a little bit higher
Yes.
capacity, older the building.
That-
okay.
That played a role as well as, Tyler, if you can go to the next slide.
So many variables.
We addressed this in the first bullet here. So those capacities were not using the smaller schools, right? So once again, one of the assumptions was that the smaller schools would come offline. So we know that Greenhurst, Snake, Centennial, and Central have the smallest capacity limits out of our 14 buildings. Meaning if we fill them plump full, they hold the fewest amount of students. Also, we know that Central, Snake, Greenhurst, Centennial, Park Ridge have seen large enrollment decreases, and their numbers are also trending down. Like we showed in our variance slides, with ESSER not there helping us kind of buffer this, our really small and really large class realities are present if we stay at 14 schools. There's no way we're going to be able to avoid that. Also just wanted to point out that one of the things that sometimes helps us buffer those differences is federal money, especially Title I. As we continue to receive less Title I and the cost of employees, because Title I, for those that don't know, when we hire someone with federal money, we have to use the federal money to pay for their benefits as well. So the whole burden of that employee has to come out of the federal fund. And so our buying power for staff is going down drastically. As we raise benefits, as salaries raise, our ability to use title money or other federal money to purchase staff just continues to decrease. Its buying power just continues to go down. And it's challenging. Like I said, I've sat in those FTE meetings, and Mr. Stauffer sat many of them with me over the last decade, and the number of schools that could purchase classroom teachers to help with some of these challenges is just almost gone away. The number of schools that actually have enough title money to afford a full-time teacher there's a few, but there's not many. Most of us have went from teachers to parapros, and even some of our smaller schools are now challenged to even hire a full-time parapro. We just don't have the federal resource to give to 14 schools.
So the federal funding that is going down is not because we have less students that are Title I students, if you will. Is it just the feds are not?
It's both, so it's
Okay.
it's based off our poverty percentages, and those have gone down over the last decade in the Nampa community.
So it's a combination of both.
But, and then it's also based off number of students, right? So as your enrollment goes down, and then as our poverty numbers have ticked down a little bit as well, those two things have converged to where they just send us, we qualify for less money.
Okay.
Yep, and it's probably more related to enrollment, Trustee Kirkman, to be honest with you. It is related some to the percentages coming down. But at 1,900 students, if we're running a district that's close to 50% free and reduced lunch, that's, real quick doing my math, that's close to 1,000, right? That's 850 or whatever it is, 950 students that aren't generating that revenue. Yep. Hence, we'll reiterate a little bit of the theme tonight. Hence, we need some decisions fast. We're hoping how many schools we're going to be operating is decided in December. And then we do need the boundaries drawn, similar to what Mr. Coffey was sharing, the human impact, but also a lot of the staffing assignments that we have to make decisions on all the way through the system. That's administration all the way through our classified support staff. A lot of that is directly dependent upon number of schools, the enrollment size, and all those things that go with it. In order for us to get a good number of class size, then we know how many teachers, so forth and so on. You guys get what I'm saying there. So we need to be able to act in March on all those things. Otherwise, we pretty much paralyze our ability to build school year 24-25. All right, Tyler. We can go back and revisit any of those slides. We can answer more questions. That's why we're here.
So trustees, I just want to clarify, just so that we're all on the same page, and for anybody listening, they're requesting for a short timeline, just the decision on number of schools before winter break. I want everybody to know that that won't be a possibility, as we are not all able to get together until the 18th. So I just want everybody to be on the same page that that meeting happens the first day of winter break.
Yeah.
Just so that everybody understands where we're at with the timeline.
And that's if the
Oh.
board makes a decision.
That's if. I'm just trying to let everybody know that even the request, we just don't have a meeting scheduled for.
Tyler, could you go back to the, I don't know, second or third, the third slide with all the pretty numbers, the colors and all the numbers and colors?
Second.
Yeah, there you go.
So let me see if I can remember my question. I was looking at this graph and then kind of looking at the capacity. And again, I'm using this enrollment comparison again, jumping ahead to the superintendent's comments from this enrollment comparison. And this might be out of your wheelhouse and maybe into Mr. LeBou's a little bit, but those cohorts coming from K through 5, moving into 6th, 7th, 8th grade into middle school, and the possibility of one of our middle schools closing, will that increase the numbers of our middle schools? A combination, the cohort moving into the middle schools, possibly one closing. Are we going to be at, all of a sudden, are we going to be like, how can we have, because if you look at some of these numbers here, the numbers have increased a little bit for 6th, 7th, and 8th, not a whole lot, but I know that in 2020 or 23, 24, and last year they were down, but really throughout the few years ago. So I'm just, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Sure, Taylor. Trustee Kirkman, very good question. We actually will bring more information around middle school for you as well, so you can have that and share that out as soon as we have it. But just to give you a general answer to that question, right now, many of our middle schools are operating around 670, 650, with our smallest one operating at 523, or is it 525? Somewhere in there. I might be off by 2 students, but 520 for that, and the other is around 620 to 670. I think 670 is our highest over at Lone Star. Essentially, what would happen if you were to close the smallest middle school and you broke that up evenly again based on boundaries and send 175 to these other ones, you push them up to about 850, 860, and they have capacities for 1,000.
Right.
So you very similarly puts you in about the 85% to 86 percentile utilization of the buildings.
But is that including the cohorts coming from the next 2-3 years from?
So the cohorts coming from the elementary school are smaller than what's leaving.
So
So the
hopefully
8th
we
grade
can
classes
keep
that are leaving and the 5th grade classes that are coming in have been smaller historically through that. And I'm looking at
And I
Courtney's.
know those middle schools also are moving to high schools and so on. So everything, nothing is static here. I get that. I understand. So I guess it's a foreshadow question to whoever might be coming up. All right.
No,
And-
and it's a good question. And I think what's important is when you do look up at 6th, 7th, and 8th up towards the top, we're still 350, 400 students less now at the middle school level. And 2 to 3 years from now, when you project out, we're sending them 850 to 900 students, not 1,000.
Yeah.
It's going to be challenging for them as well.
Agreed. Okay. That's all I have on the questions. Thank you for your indulgence.
Trustees, any other questions? Any other questions? So walk me through that. I'm sorry, I'm still lost on Jeff's question. So right here in the 4th grade, I see a cohort, 23, 24, we have 1,000. we're replacing 992. But then when we go to the third grade, I have 1,065, and right now in seventh grade, I have 946. That's over 100 additional students. So I guess my question would be, have we forecasted for that increase in students in the middle school area as well? I see two heads nodding diligently behind you quickly.
If the middle school were to also close?
Well, if a middle school were to also close,
Well,
I see where your question is coming from, because
and I-
those numbers don't go down. That cohort is larger than our current middle
What-
school cohort.
What's challenging though is like, look at seventh grade for 946 this school year. When you backtrack them in third grade, they're 1,054, pretty much the same size as our third grade group
So you're
right
telling me
now.
we lose, and that's the question. So you're telling me that we ebb and flow in such a way?
It is, and the middle school, like high school always tends to drop a little bit from what we see down below, but middle school tends to be a little bit hard to gauge. Sometimes they're a little bit flat, sometimes they're a little bit down, sometimes just slightly up, but by and large, they shrink just a little bit off those elementary cohorts.
So-
Not always, it's an
Yeah,
imperfect science, but
Chair Taylor, let's go back a while. If you look at 15, 16, you look at the fifth grade cohort was 1,200. Well, the almost 200, about 150 kids or so by the time they get sixth grade didn't enroll in that. So hard to predict always, but we anticipate there being smaller cohorts going because that's what we've seen pretty consistently in the last several years.
A third just happens to be a fairly large cohort. Like it's one of the largest since, well, 2021 to 2020. We had 1046, then 1055, then 1078. Oh, sorry, 1065. Sorry, I'm looking at second grade. So 1065, 1060, 999, 1024, 1054. So that's just an abnormally large third grade cohort. Yeah.
So far, it seems it's held fairly steady. Again, coming out of COVID, it's hard with COVID numbers. 19, 20, 2021 are really tough numbers to gauge off. But you're looking at that, yeah, it's that third grade cohort stayed fairly consistent.
Something about that third grade cohort, just, yeah, it's just large.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I have.
That's all I had as well. Thank you,
Good. You
Mr.
bet.
Knopf, for the updates and information. I will reiterate that I feel like we continuously go over this information, so I appreciate that we're reviewing it again in such depth.
thanks, Tyler.
Okay, Dr. Russell, enrollment report?
Chair Taylor, trustees, just as in front of you is your enrollment report for November. Happy to answer any questions if you have that. Otherwise,
Trustee Kirkman, did you have any questions on the
I think
enrollment
I asked
report?
them all.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, and there was some clarification that was provided, and I appreciate that. That 244 Nampa Early Childhood Center at Greenhurst, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Man, just some of these percentages, when you just look, because I know that some of our public, the parents, are going to look at these percentages without any of the other mitigating variables that might be included in this, and just think, crud, we got one middle school that's at 50%. Anyway, so I appreciate this report. But Lone Star, 727, they're at 72%,
But remember, part of it is, the reason behind that is because, we've had Union, pick up middle school kids as well. We've had, New Horizons, Nova, so those other opportunities have opened up
yeah.
as well. So it's not necessarily just drops in enrollment, it's the opportunities have become available even within our own district for our middle school students.
I got kind of an off-topic question, but it's on topic. Do a lot of our elementary schools have those modular buildings? And if so, what becomes of those? I mean, are they leased? Do we own them?
Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, I'll have Mr. Stauffer kind of answer that for you. We don't have too many anymore. We've gotten rid of most of ours. We had many back when we were overcrowded, but go ahead, Mr. Stauffer.
Ditto, Chairman Taylor, Trustee Kirkman. we don't have any students that are currently receiving
Right.
classes in any of the modules. We do have a couple of our elementaries that do have them there. Most of those will house some secondary type of programs. Thinking Willow Creek has our Boys and Girls Club program that is in the modulars. We have probably, I think, 4 of our elementaries at this time have modulars on sites, but none of them are for classroom usage.
And they're semi-permanent, I would assume.
They're semi-permanent,
Yeah.
yes. They are hooked up to electrical. They're on, some of them have plumbing, some of them do not. So they are fairly fixed, but they are, again, modular, so we can move them as needed as well.
Okay, but there are no plans to, they're just gonna be there, use them if we need them, they'll be there if we don't.
My predecessor before this, it started to sell off quite a few because we had so many at one point in time that we did not use them, and they were very vacant. They were vacant and we didn't have uses, so we started selling off a few in the past few years before I came on board.
Great. Very vacant. Cool. Thank you.
Trustees, any more questions regarding the enrollment report? All right, I'm gonna move on to policies and procedures to be reviewed annually. C.
Can you guys hear me? Perfect, I thought so. In your board packet is all the required policies that need to be reviewed. I also put a timeline that includes what it's aligned with that normally gets presented to the board for board approval, along with links, which I'll be updating some of those links after tonight's meeting, and I update the policy website for board docs. But it's also aligned with the board agenda setting tool, so if you look at some of it, it will say, policy 1600 at the annual meeting, because it's your code of ethics. So I've aligned that on each month at a glance, and then also this tool so that you guys are aware of how we can ensure the board is always reviewing those policies. So when the handbooks start getting presented again for next year, we also attach the policies just so that you're aware that you can review those ahead and you don't have to search for them.
Trustees, any questions for Clerk Lamont?
No, I was just looking for the timelines, and I was looking at this document and noticed there weren't any timelines, but there,
Oh, sorry, I did put in my.
but in the notes.
In the
the-
notes, and then I
Yeah.
do have the agenda setting tool that I will be sharing with you guys as part of my evaluation. That I have one for this year and next year. So in annual meeting, it'll be January. I put calendar approval because it depends on when they bring their calendar and their handbooks. I do have it on multiple months just in case you have to move in the agenda setting one. So it's a timeline with not confirmed
Without
dates.
the time, yeah.
Yes.
I was expecting dates.
I'm not that
No, I
great.
get it.
Um,
I get it.
The one that's not on here's required review is as I was looking through the financial policies, I also found a policy for the Preston Capel committee. So I align that with working with Mr. Dewey on when the board would need to select a member. So I also put that on the timeline, that policy along with the alignment of setting that committee member.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Lamont. All right, from there, we will go to the treasurer's report.
Chair Taylor, trustees, Mr. Dewey's going to come and help kind of summarize a little bit of where we are currently.
Can you pull up my slides? Coming up. I was told I have to do this in 1 minute, so just let you guys know.
Told by who?
Everybody. Just kidding. You guys have as many questions as you want. Yeah. Waiting on.
You can present it in 1 minute, but the questions might be 30,
No,
45 minutes long.
Finance is my most important thing, so I don't care. You want to go to the next one, please? All right, so I just kind of want to give you guys an update. We're starting to get some of our numbers in. Obviously, the first Friday of November, we start getting this in. It's kind of a real crazy year for funding, different than any other time we've had it. And so I'm going to try to go through it without trying to get too complicated in it because it's a lot more complicated than that. But we'll just kind of go from where we are. Just remind you guys, we're a budget at 630 units. That is down from the previous year. Remember, we were at 664 from the prior year. So we did take into consideration ADA. That was a whole conversation during the work session about, using ESSER and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Right now, when we look at where our ADA is, we're down to our average daily attendance is 11,938, which equates to 608 units. So you think about that big of a difference between where we were last year at 664 with enrollment to now 608 That's that big of a difference with how much an ADA costs us, and that one veto from the governor did that. So state law has protection, so we're like, great, we got protection, right? 97%. What they don't tell you is that protection is paid for by the districts. It's not paid by the state. So every year, we've always paid in protection because we've never really had to deal with it. Prior to COVID, we've always paid 2 units, 1.5 units or whatever. It generally was for those small schools, districts that lost a plant, let's say. So right when the school starts, you don't want to have to try to fire teachers right away. You've already signed contracts and all that kind of stuff. So that's basically what that's for. And we've always pitched in. Well, ever since COVID started, that's what basically this part of the protection process is what's actually killed the formula. It's never been handled this way before, and that's one of the biggest reasons they had to switch to enrollment funding, because of this exact same problem. The system cannot utilize it. And if you look down here, the state actually needs, we got a document from the state just recently that says, based on our numbers right now, the state actually needs 650 units total of protection. Okay? You'll look at, I grabbed some of the top 4. Those school districts alone just need that many. So here's the thing, even a small district who thought they were great have to pay into that protection. So they're like, hey, our ADA is great, we're good to go. They went in and all of a sudden found out, hey, you need to pay in 5 of us because all of us big boys now need you. So that's a big, big hit. We can handle some small districts can. So that's what we're dealing with now. So when it's all said and done, if you want to go to the next slide, where they believe we will end up. So the 649.33, you see that up there, that's what we would have been if we were protected from last year. They believe right now we're going to end up at 620.3. So that's our protection minus what we have to pay into the pot. So we don't get all of our 97%. Okay. Right now, based on my numbers, it looks about $1.4 million of projected revenue loss associated with that. And we're also seeing a decline in our average teacher salaries. Not the end of the world, but it's not finalized either because they haven't got all of our new teachers in, got them all put on the career ladder yet. So we're still working off, I wouldn't say bad data, but just incomplete data. So that's an estimate now. So when I take that in consideration, we're looking at about a $2.1 million loss from revenue. Okay. Again, don't freak out because I'm not freaking out. If you want to go to the next one. All right. So this is where I'm at here. I don't know if you want to call it loss mitigation or this is reality. Okay. Right now, the State Department has put in a supplemental request to the legislature. They do realize there's money that was left on the table last year that got taken from us because of all the ADA decline. So that money's sitting out there. If they don't give it to us, it's going to go straight to the PCF, which is the public schools fund. It just goes to a bank account, really for the future. So they're working on it. They put it in there. Not exactly sure how they pay it out. One of the ways I think one person has said is they pay it out through our discretionary funds, which isn't a one-to-one from our apportionment, which is a bummer. If we can get it, I would be great. But it's one-time money. It's not something we'll get great for future. And hopefully they do something about this. Because if they don't do anything about it, we will be, next year, we'll have to start budgeting it like at 608, 610 at minimum. That's a big hit. Here's the other part about it. The way our salary works, it's actually not one-to-one, right? We get money from the career ladder, but we also pay more than the career ladder. So on the lower lengths or in the higher ranks, we actually, I put some numbers there to kind of give you an idea. We pay up here for an experienced teacher, but the state's only giving us down here. They've tried to give us a new level, which is advanced placement. But you got to do some things, and we're trying to get some people in that group, and not everybody of our experienced teachers is in that advanced placement. So reality is, the majority of our teachers are sitting down into the $50,000 range that we get from the career ladder, and we're paying as much as $65,000 to $67,000 this year for those people. That's a big gap.
Is that fully burdened?
No,
Okay.
that's just their pay.
Just
So
their
then
pay.
you add the 20% on top of that and all that. So in my land, which is in finance, I love it when we replace somebody with experience, somebody with higher end of the pay scale with somebody brand new, because when we bring somebody brand new in, we are closer to that gap. That gap reduces, and it's really it's a gain for the general fund. It really is. Not the best for education, but I'm finance, and I said, hey, sweet, we got money. So all I was saying before when I said that we're lower in average teacher salary, it doesn't necessarily mean that we missed our mark. It means we've hired people and our estimates of who we were going to hire in were end up lower. And as a result, when I look at our money, we're actually sitting pretty good. If you want to go to the next one. Oh, actually, I had it at the bottom of the other one. Sorry, go back to the front. Actually, I see right now about $2 million in budget that has not been spent yet because of that change. So we're not in the end of the world. So like I said, no freak out. We're not going to have to make big cuts this year or anything like that. It hurts. If we get that money from a part of that $92 million, the plan is we'll meet with everybody. It's not something we're going to go out and spend. We're not going to go and increase spending in this time because we know we need this money. My concern is it's only one-time money, so it's not something I can budget going forward and feel good about. It's really how do we get this into our fund balance so we can pad and make sure that we're making good decisions in following years for that.
And this $2 million, the savings in salaries, that can only be spent on salaries.
No, it's general fund money.
Great.
So at this point in time, we are doing what we can all, when we hire somebody, we have to pay career ladder minimums regardless. So we're way above that in everything we do. And so we're just we're treading water with that right now. And hopefully in a lot of that, there is some people we still have to hire, and that $2 million doesn't include that, but there's some of those positions that won't get hired still that'll help us in other ways. I'll also have some increases in other areas that we weren't ready for. I mean, that's the other side of it. So generally, when it's all said and done, other than last year, we are usually about 1.5% of our general fund budget that we don't spend. And on a $100 million budget, you can do the math on that.
So if we were to, if some schools were to close and some of those FTEs were gone, would this picture look a little bit different then at that point too?
So the whole
salary savings.
Yeah, so the whole reality of our schools closing is to right size. We've been trying to right size our teacher staff every year that we use our units. So it's not like this massive decline in teachers that we're going to get. So a lot of the savings that we've actually provided you is more of our savings with our ancillary staff, like our principals, some of those people. It's not necessarily our teaching positions. We do, based on the analysis that we did before, if everything worked perfect and everybody went the way we wanted, yeah, potentially we could reduce some positions, because where we had 2 classrooms of 17, now we can combine those with other ones, and now that's maybe 1 less teacher we might need there. But it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to need to let somebody go, because we have so much attrition already, especially in elementary. It's a matter of which school you're going to go to. And so my hope is that we can still right size a little bit more with the closing of schools. That's the hope. But it's really there's so much more other expense with just keeping the school open that with the little class sizes that makes a big difference in that.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, did I interrupt?
Nope.
All right, I got one more slide. So any other questions on that? I just want to make sure it's not doom and gloom. We do know where we're at. We're going to keep on it, and I'm not giving a lot of money out to anybody to do special projects right now, so that we don't already know is out there. Like I said, the audit's completed. You guys got that. We had that last time. And because of that, what we always do is we guarantee everything's good. We move our carry forwards forward. So when you look at our financials, you'll see there's a difference between original and that, and you'll see a bunch of stuff start popping into this month. So that's what it is. I'm starting to update budgets. Okay, now we know exactly what our balance left over with Title I. So now we're redoing some things for Title I to get that updated, or Title III, or even our general fund for our carryovers and stuff like that. So we're trying to get all that in the system. We'll have, by next time you see in December, it'll be even more clear on that, because everything will just be that much more refined. You'll see right now in the federal revenues seem really low. We're just waiting on the state to approve our CSFGA, which is basically our big application for our big money. This isn't ESSER. This is our normal federal funds. And it's just been held out with some questions that they have. So we're working through them with that, and hopefully here soon you'll start seeing millions of dollars coming in for revenue. We don't recognize revenue. It's not when we earned it, it's when we actually receive it. We're just in time that way.
Yeah.
Technically, we've earned it the moment in time we spent it, but we just recognize it when we actually get the money. So that money will come in, start seeing millions of dollars starting in December. You'll start seeing some of that come through.
You say this is normal. Is it normal for the state to hold the applications up like that, or are they just moving a
every
little
year?
bit
So there's a
slower?
whole new staff at the state now.
Yeah.
They've gone through some different people, and we have some stuff we were working on as well. We had it in, and then we pulled it back because with some of the carry forward, our numbers were a little different, so we had to regenerate. And now we've re-put it back out there. They had some more questions, I think, last week that we're working through. But other than that, I think it should be ready to go here soon. So,
And one more
Yep.
question along this line. Do you see, some people may understand this question, some people may not. Do you see with the State Department of Education and having to move, that agency move to Luma and the school district not, do you see a lot of issues with that? Because I know that
yeah.
that
So
system
when
is
that
really
system,
kind
so the Luma system you're talking about, so anybody doesn't know, it's the previous STAR system. It's basically the state's ERP system that they've tried to build, and
ERP,
ERP system. They're
define it.
enterprise system. They're a big accounting system, let's
Okay.
say.
everything.
So
money,
it
everything.
runs
your
everything,
accounting
and the way that our state did it this year, instead of what a lot of people do, instead of doing it in parts, they just did one big okay. I mean, it makes sense in some aspect, another aspect, it just killed a lot of people. For the first couple months, we actually didn't get our Medicaid payments for a while because we couldn't get them. Now they've kind of got it figured out. Now, part of what hit us is with our insurance, because our state insurance now we're on that, but then Blue Cross went and did an update at the same time. So it kind of hit us. So we're 2 or 3 months back with reconciliations on that kind of thing. But as far as everything else, they've pretty much figured out how to get us our payments.
Okay.
So we're good with that. But it is a train wreck for a little bit. And some of our reporting we needed for our audits, we didn't get for a while. They had to generate it out of
But
the
at
old
this
system.
point, it hasn't tripped us up, the district up enough to where we're.
No, we're
scrambling.
pretty insulated from that. It's really the big thing for that is that they can get out our main payments, and so we just got our November 15th payment, and they got that out just fine to us, so we're good there.
Thank you.
Yep.
And is there a way they can change the word protection? That sounds so mobbish mentality type thing.
Well, the real thing is it's a misnomer in my opinion, because they
Yeah.
say you guys are good, you're protected, but the reality is we're protecting ourselves.
Isn't
And
that
before, yeah. So the frustration
very
I have
identity
with it
just
all,
stated
and I actually pushed for this when they were talking about this. Okay, just change the protection is paid for by the state. If they would have just changed the law and said protection is paid by the state instead of the district, none of this problem would be an issue. We would get used to it. We'd all go down individually. The problem I have with it, the state takes all the revenue because they budgeted for this. They got $100 million that they sit on, and we as a district already are low, and now we have to give more. So it just, I mean, like I said, we were supposed to get 646. We had to budget low because we knew we weren't going to get that because of the protection issue, and we're even still getting 10 more because it was even worse than we thought it would be.
Yeah, you're right, it's a misnomer. Appreciate your insight.
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
Any other questions, trustees? All right, Mr. Dewey, thank you for your
Yep.
time and happy Thanksgiving. Superintendent report, Dr. Russell?
Yeah, Chair Taylor, trustees, just a couple of things on the superintendent report. First of all, I just want to have a huge thank you to the community for our levy passing. As I stated before, incredibly grateful for that, and it has a huge impact on our schools. It's not going to fix all of the enrollment drop or the ADA enrollment switch from the state, but it does definitely provide 44 positions for our schools, technology and curriculum, and allows us to do some other really nice things for our students as well. So just a huge thank you for that, and it means a lot to everyone in the district and to all of our kids. Second thing there, just wanted to give you an update on kind of the state of the schools and some of the things that we've been working on with around that. So as you see, there was some clarity here around the elementary. We will bring more information around the middle school class sizes, something similar. Now, middle school is a little more complicated because you have some electives and things there, but we'll be focusing more around core class sizes and kind of where we are now and where we will be if we go from 4 to 3, just so you have that information as well, and we'll share that. As Mr. Coffey had mentioned, one of the questions that we got from staff, and we did go speak with some of the staffs that are going to be impacted, said, if a decision is made, and want to reiterate, no decision has been made. But we wanted at least to get out in front of those staff so we could answer some of their questions. And we couldn't answer everyone at this point. But a lot of the questions focused around, will I have a job? I mean, that is their biggest concern, rightfully so. So we are working on a transfer process. We have a meeting, I think, on Tuesday when we get back, and I think we'll have a pretty good draft at that point that we could go back to staffs and start getting some input on. And then happy to share that with the board as well so you can understand that process.
Dr. Russell, not to interrupt, when do you think that we're going to see the information around middle school?
My question exactly.
I would think, I'm going to look at Courtney, that probably the first week we get back. I think
Okay.
by that Friday, I can send that out. I'll shoot that for our Friday update to be able to have some of that information. It'll look very similar to this.
Will that be presented, do you think, at the 18th, on the 18th school board? If we
Can-
have to,
Can present it then for sure. Can present it earlier if the trustees would like at some point.
Trustees, I think that this is a really good time to say, do you want that information on the same night that they're going to ask for action based on the timeline? And I think that that's going to be probably a no, so we'd like a little bit earlier.
Trustees, also don't forget about the upcoming December 6th meeting.
yeah, we
Yeah,
have
it's on here.
special meeting.
It might be a good idea to give clear expectations of what you'd like, the superintendent and staff to provide prior to taking that public input on that meeting. That might be something you wanna add, I'm not saying for sure, but I think setting them up for success with what you would like to see, so that you can possibly take action on the 18th.
So just to continue with middle school projections, we'll try to get those out this week. We'll also, I'm looking at probably the first week of December to be able to share where we are with our transfer process and how that will look out. That gives us a week to finalize that and get some feedback from staff so we can tweak that. We'll get that to the board as well. And then I wanted to share, as we get close to the 6th, happy to take any input you would have for that. The 6th is our listening session for the community to come and provide input. But we would also like to send a survey out prior to that. And I was going to have Mr. Stauffer come forth and share just some general where we are with that, so you have an idea what the kind of that survey might be, because we'd like to be able to have that information to the board as well, what that survey says.
Trustee Taylor, Board of Trustees, we have a slide that I'd like to share with you, some of the things that we've been considering as we would look at a survey to gather some input from our community regarding the potential closure of schools. Here's just a rough timeline of things that we have. We have been doing some work beforehand, and so we have been behind the scenes working with our systems to make sure that we can have the ability to get this out. So the 27th to 28th is we have been generating some questions already for it, but this 27th to 29th is when we actually upload it into our Qualtrics system, have the student files and all the data inputted into it so that we would be able to send it out. The messaging would, that top line is just more internal information of how we would proceed and process it. We tested on the November 30th. With the expected distribution to our community from the 5th through the 12th, which also covers a weekend. We felt that was really important to have a weekend in there to have parents have the time to process and look at it as well. That's also one of the key indicators as we were working with our partners at Qualtrics. They strongly suggested that we have a weekend in any one of our surveys, so we made sure we addressed that. We have a dashboard that we will have and want to make available for you as well, that you will have a dashboard of as the responses are being built and coming in, that you'll be able to see those live. So that's one of the key ingredients that we wanted to have with this as well. So we'll be building that dashboard as well as we start receiving the information. We're going to help drive and build that dashboard so that you'll be able to see that. We'll review the results with the internal team on the 13th when it closes. Part of that is just to make sure that we're clearing up any inconsistencies or any information that is a clerical in nature, and also to make sure that the dashboards are appropriate, with the expectation that we would have a board ready for the board packet on the 15th that we would submit as part of the board packet for the board meeting on the 18th. So you would have access through it the entire time, but we would clean it up and have the final version ready for the 15th. Now the side piece to that is this last part was we really want to do some messaging before we send out the survey. Part of that includes sending out various types of information that include things that we have covered as a board and as a school district over the last year and a half. We're going to try to do some synopsis and put together why the things we've been talking about today are so important. And Dr. Russell is going to help us by putting out a video that will be a synopsis of the things that we have been covering for a while. We will also talk about the need of wanting their input and how to access that input. So we'll have about 3 front-loading informationals that will go out before the actual survey goes out. And a part of that will also be some front-facing information as far as how to access the survey. We will be doing it through our through the email piece. There's some reasons why we did that, and that's part of our history of what we've done with some of the surveys to ensure that our surveys are coming from our people instead of potentially other states or other countries. We're making sure that that is coming from your constituent and our constituent bases. So that's really the timeline of what we're trying to accomplish. The survey in and of itself will probably last about 5 minutes. Now there is an open input, so they'll have the ability to just type their feelings in there, type whatever's on their mind. And then what we'll do with that afterwards is with the Qualtrics team, we'll be looking at analyzing those personal pinned ideas and comments, and we'll be able to categorize them for you as well. So we'll be working through that in preparation to make sure that you have the information as the community is presenting it. Now, part of that, we do expect a lot of this to be some tough and some probably difficult and emotional responses from our community, as we totally expect. This is an emotional decision for many as we look at closing. It is for us. I mean, nobody, I think, in this room is excited about the potential closure of schools. That's not something that we sign up for, but it is something that we know that we are exploring for various reasons and very important reasons. So we don't expect this survey to come out with lots of roses in it. We do expect the survey to come out with people's concerns, and most likely they're not going to be in favor of a lot of the ideas that we're generating as a district. So we expect that, and I just thought it was important to kind of put that out there. This is not a survey that we're expecting to get a ton of everything is awesome type of quotes and huge supports around the process. Again, in any normal circumstance, I don't think any of us would want to have these conversations about school closure. So just kind of want to put that out there. We do expect there to be a lot of emotional responses and some practical responses as well, as they've thought through this and had an opportunity to think about it in their own, for their own perspective, and then share those with us as well. So just wanted to give you that front load of what our timeline looks like and what information we hope to have to you. And ongoing through those dashboards, you'll be able to look at those as well as we do this process.
Mr. Stauffer, is there any way, have you guys thought about sending out through text also?
We
to
have.
the survey or information about the survey. I know it costs a little bit, but
yeah. No, Trustee Taylor
gets their
and
emails.
Trustee Kirkman, we have. One of the challenges that we do have with it is that fidelity to our constituent base. Part of the links that we're using and what we've been working with Qualtrics is that is the highest recommended for fidelity to keeping to our constituents. If you attach it to a text, it will only go to the phone numbers, just like the emails that we have in our database. And there is some ability for that to be forwarded on. It can't maintain the integrity of that phone number in the back end of it. So what we've been explained to is really the best system to use for our current setup is the email addresses. Yeah, we tried the text, we tried QR codes.
Could you follow that up maybe with a text and say, hey, go check your email or something?
Yeah, through Parent Square, we'll
Yeah,
have that
okay.
capacity. Yes,
Right.
understanding your question a little bit better. Yes, if the parent has selected to receive text messages, we can. If they have selected not to receive text messages, then we can push it out through Parent Square and through the choice that they have selected. So we'll do a lot of that communication, front loading through Parent Square. Also, in reminding them, in some cases, when we send it out, they'll need to check their junk mail, and also check in the interim beforehand, what emails have you associated to your student's account? because that's the key indicator. If you have guardianships, if you have parents and you have split families and you have multiple, we want to make sure that they all have an opportunity to share their voices because they're all invested in their kids' education. So we could have several different emails, but if they haven't inputted them, then we won't reach them. So we'll explain that a little bit in our front loading emails to please check that in PowerSchool and upload and make sure that they have them identified as well. So that's part of the plan.
Good.
But again, from text messages, it's only for those that have allowed us to use that mechanism. That's one of the good things about Parent Square, and that's one of the bad things. I mean, the good thing is it has parent choice. It gets delivered how they choose to have the information delivered.
Yeah, well, you can only do what you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it.
While you are here, what's our new Facebook thing that all of a sudden I'm a part of? It's like a new Facebook communication that you can do. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, so it's one of the new features from Facebook has opened up, and so we have one that we've actually, Tyler and I have been exploring and trying to use it. It's another venue for us to be able to
Yeah,
just
I thought
post
that was
information.
Yeah,
And it's,
I'm
yeah,
all in.
Yeah.
I'm all in. Get my little Facebook and a stamp page. I thought that was
Yeah.
great.
yeah.
Chair
So we're
Taylor,
actually exploring with
trustees,
it.
just real quick clarification, Mr. Stauffer, just, and I'm sure this is happening, but wanted the public to hear it. Sorry, Hispanic Latino population, Spanish, the survey will be out in dual languages.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Russell, that was one of the things we did want to take input. So we have specifically identified Spanish as one of the languages that we're translating it into. I'll be reviewing it as well to make sure that the content is, it's not just a Google translation, that we've had an opportunity to really look at it and make sure it's getting our intent across. So we definitely are looking at that as well.
Any other languages?
We can.
I mean, do we
One of
have
the
Ukrainian? We've got quite a few recurrent.
Yeah, one of the challenges that we do have with using Qualtrics is we have to identify the languages and associate them with it. One of the challenges we're finding is with our Ukrainian languages right now, there isn't a great correlation between Qualtrics and our Ukrainian language. That is one area that we are weak in right now.
And don't we have more Romanian speakers than Ukrainian speakers?
Or Romanian.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't have the demographics for all those because typically one thing with the Parent Square does a better job for us in some of these components is that the parents choose the home language in which it receives, and there's an automatic translation
Okay.
Oh, good.
that takes place from Parent Square. The survey is going to be a little bit harder because we're using the Qualtrics and it's a different interface, and we're working on trying to figure out with
But
the
they'll
team.
still receive the message in Parent Square that there is a survey. and
There
language of
is,
choice.
yes.
Okay.
Yep. And again, the parent identifies the language. And so as they identify it, that's how it will be interpreted for them. And that's all done at the very beginning. And they can change. I mean, they can go back in and change if they prefer to receive it in another language. They have that option of doing that.
Okay.
Great.
We're getting better. The
Uh,
whole part is we
Trustees,
think we're getting
any
better.
other questions, or Dr. Russell, anything else that Mr. Stuffer needs to cover?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We only demand perfection. You're good, man.
I personally demand excellence. So, Dr. Russell, did you hit F as well?
Yes.
Okay, so, trustees, possible agenda items, because this says this right here, I just want to point out, we have a December 4th meeting.
I'm sorry, Chair Taylor, just to back up real quick on the town hall meeting, where's that gonna be located? Where's that gonna be held?
Chair Taylor, Trustee Kirkman, we're still discussing
okay.
the best location. Right now, we're tentatively thinking Nampa High, but I'll have to work with our
Okay,
chair and
Just wondered if
kind
it'd
of
been
figure that
set
out.
yet.
Okay, so trustees, as far as possible agenda items, Trustee Kirkman, I heard you say that you want the middle school in a presentation.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think all of us do.
yep, totally good,
Oh, you mean at a board meeting?
at a board meeting.
Yeah, I'd like it
At a
before.
board meeting.
Yeah.
I'd like it
Before the
board
18th.
meeting, yeah.
So really quick, that leaves us the 4th and then the town hall. So is this request that you guys would like
What's
one
on the
other
4th?
meeting? The 4th is,
No, don't-
Executive session with, the
Emergency planning.
And
It's
then
annual emergency planning.
also, B, to discuss student or employee,
Yeah, so,
and then also negotiations. It might be the best because on the agenda for the 6th, on this draft agenda, it does have, just one second, cause I just was getting ready to email it. It does, the idea of that agenda setting, when I met with, Superintendent Russell and Chair Taylor, was that it would open the meeting and then we would have, town hall, school closure, state of the schools mitigations, and A would be a presentation, also including options. I think that might be the best place to provide it to you in writing, but then also in the public if you want, or schedule a special meeting prior to the
18th.
18th. Would be your best options to set your staff up for success
What's
prior
the
to the 4th.
time frame for that town hall?
So that's what I'm gonna
2
chat about really
hours.
quick. So we wanted to allow, I wanted to allow probably 2 hours in the event that we get an excessive amount of public comment, because that's been our practice. But, we could go ahead and extend it. We don't have to put a time limit on it. We could go ahead, take public comment during that town hall, and then ask for a presentation as well during that meeting. Or we could make it just about a town hall and schedule another meeting. I'm open to either.
Well,
We just have to have the conversation because it's such a small time frame.
but the presentation probably should be before.
Well, that's what I
Yeah,
think,
I just don't know,
because
that's what
then
I'm trying to say, I just am not
people are
sure.
gonna feel like, why didn't we have this information
Yeah.
ahead
Prior.
of time before we were
Or it's
able
gonna
to speak.
completely derail what they were even gonna talk about
Right,
after we
yeah.
present more information and then allow comment.
I think maybe the middle school presentation on the 4th.
Okay,
we already have a
that's what I
meeting
wanted to hear.
scheduled. That gives the public, if they tune in and,
A little bit of time.
yeah, that they can digest it a
That's
little
what I was
bit,
trying to
and
get to.
then
So trustees,
come to the town hall with some questions and a little bit more
are we
information.
okay
Yeah.
then, because we are meeting with outside sources, to go ahead and schedule that meeting to start a bit earlier so that we can get that presentation publicly?
Is it on Sunday?
It's on Monday, and the attendees that were invited to executive session will be there at 5:30. So starting it early, or just making sure you're done with them within an hour, and then doing.
And then
the
going
next.
after.
Chair Taylor, trustees, would it be helpful, on the 4th, I agree, I think it'd be good to do the middle school. Should we put some of the mitigation strategies that we have talked about in our work session in that presentation as well, just so it's, again,
It's
2 days
there.
before
I
this?
think that would be
Okay.
great if you could tie it in.
Yeah.
I just want us to be clear that that's gonna make for a fairly long meeting, but at least it covers all of that information before the town hall. Cause I don't like to schedule wrangle, and I don't wanna have to leave this meeting and do that.
Yeah.
So let's have the chat now,
The
I would like it to
invitees
be
on the
early,
4th,
but-
earlier.
can we change that meeting to an hour later and then start at 4:30 or 5?
I think,
And then go to 6:30 and then have the executive session?
So you wanna start it at 4:30?
I would have to work with staff, and they would be able to help me with that after the holiday, since everyone is gone.
Trustee
'Cause
Kirkman,
the
could you be here an
attendees
hour
did confirm
earlier?
5:30.
Could you be here at 4:30?
Could we get the presentation and the information in an hour?
So we're just wondering, can we start earlier, do that presentation break, and then go into that additional stuff? That was Mandy's request, and I'm
Yeah.
also fine with the
Yeah.
4:30 start.
I hate to agree in a public meeting, some people hold me to it.
I
but-
would love it. I would love it.
Yeah, I can reschedule some
Okay.
things on Monday.
Started at 4:30.
4:30.
Okay.
Dr. Russell, good?
Yes.
Okay. That was all that I had, trustees. Any other agenda items before I schedule
No,
Ringo
I don't
in
think
our?
we need any more agenda
Did-
Did,
items
so
right now.
can I just ask a question on
Please.
the 6th, cause I didn't look at my calendar invite closely on that. Did we have a time set, or is that still with the planning of
It
where
was
it's
set
gonna
for
be?
6:30.
6:30? Thank you.
And we did that primarily because we'll be taking public comment,
Because of
and I
work-
wanted to
work.
schedule it
Yep.
after work.
Yep, no problem.
People
Yep, I
come
just needed to
in the
remember.
traffic.
Thank you.
All right, trustees, and this evening, there is no need for executive session.
What? I can't be home this early.
Bite your tongue.
People,
know, I
people will
agree.
expect things of
I
me.
totally agree. So with that, if there are no other possible agenda items, and Dr. Russell, if there is nothing, please, go ahead, yes.
Sorry, I hate to be this one. So, only because negotiations was brought up, and so typically, in the past, we have, as a board, appoint, who's gonna sit on that committee, as the negotiations is near and dear to my heart, and, for whatever reason, I really like the process, and I learn a ton through it, so, it is truly near and dear to my heart. I just want to make sure that we're keeping that in the forefront, that we're on a good timeline with where
So.
not only the Nampa EA, but also the district administration are at in that process. And then I'm gonna do something crazy that I may be like, why did you do that? Or at least if, hopefully none of my friends are listening tonight, because they're gonna be like, why did you do that? But I also am willing to help. I know it's new board, new things, and I will no longer be sitting on the board. But if this board so chose to have some outside help from me, I'm willing to do so, just knowing that we've got so many new people and trying to help. I would recommend that you still appoint at least one person from the board to sit on that team, but then I could hopefully help, and it's, you know, how sometimes it's easier for two schedules to be freed
Versus-
up and help with that process.
So
Just throwing that out there
The
for
only
future.
reason that we didn't talk about it tonight is because thank you, Stephanie, for showing,
Yes.
trustee Benz.
Yes.
But we didn't have a full board, and the other people that would be to consider that
Yes.
weren't here this evening. So I thought that
No
we could
problem.
address that on the 4th.
Yes.
And then I also have been saying that you're willing to do a year of mentorship, but every time I follow that up, because that's the impression I got as well. So I'm always like, and Mandy will do a year of mentorship. That's literally what I say behind your back. So now you know. But that is the only reason that we're not having that conversation
Okay.
tonight, is
Yep.
that I didn't feel that you had the audience that you'll need
Nope.
for the
Agreed.
pitch, and then your offer of 2-year
Yes.
mentorship.
It's getting longer.
It's getting longer. I talked to Greg the same way. Sorry. Anything
No,
else?
nope, that was it.
Trustee Kirkman,
No,
anything else?
nope, but I totally agree with what Trustee Simpson was saying.
Agreed. Like I said, with it just being the three of us, I
Yeah.
figured, we would want our whole board for that conversation.
And going back to what Mr. Coffey was saying at the very beginning, is that having essentially 3 new trustees, you know, we're gonna be pulling them along. I'm sure they'll get there, and they'll get there quickly. They'll do their homework. We got a great onboarding schedule, and I have no doubt that they're gonna be there. But there's a lot of information to digest over the last 2 years. Actually, we've
I
been
agree.
talking about this stuff. So
Yep.
I don't anticipate that any of that's gonna hold up the process and the decisions that need to be made. But it is also a reality. So
All right.
with that being said, use that hammer.
Adjourned.
Dang.
Seriously.